The following podcast is full of opinions and ramblings protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and may also contain adult language and adult themes of sexuality, sexual orientation, legal issues, religious trauma, sexual harassment or abuse, public scandals, mental health issues, adults being ridiculous, depression, suicidality, and a host of other challenging subjects that may be part of the human experience. Your mission, should you choose to proceed beyond this disclaimer, constitutes acceptance of the right of individuals to express themselves on this social media platform, and in no way solicits or permits even the slightest possibility of inviting legal problems should you disagree with any opinions contained herein. Viewer discretion and intelligently responsible engagement with the material is advised. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my cubbyhole on the internet. It is Monday, May 27th, Memorial Day, and this is an episode where I get to talk about some guilty pleasures that I have, that being watching Law Tube on the internet. There's so much content available, watching court cases and trials and arrests, if you are so inclined. I mean, there's so much sort of body cam footage, all that kind of stuff out there, that when things start to intersect, it gets kind of interesting. So I've been following a couple cases, the first one of which being the Laura Owens versus Clayton Echard, the contestant on the television show The Bachelor, and also a real estate agent in Arizona. That whole situation that began essentially as a paternity matter and has since devolved into a scandal, implying that the woman charging Clayton Echard of getting her pregnant has been found to be a perpetuator of a number of falsehoods, including her regular propensity to be pregnant with twins that somehow mysteriously vanish or get aborted. There is a lot, months and months of content about Laura Owens and Clayton Echard and the legal battles going on there, which will supposedly conclude in a couple of weeks on June 10th. I will be on vacation, so I'm going to miss the juicy gossip. Well, it's not gossip, it's trial. Those are factual things. I will be on vacation when all that happens, so I'll have to catch up after the fact. And then there's the other, soon to resolve, I think, in totality, but no one can really say for sure. The situation with Jenn Kamp, a former employee of the Open Stories Foundation and a brief co-host of Mormon Stories with John Dehlin of great post and ex-Mormon fame. The trial and the sort of, well, it's not just trials, it's sort of ongoing legal battles that have been happening there for over the last, I think, 2 years. So we'll go over those. The similarities in these two women and their habit of making accusations and seemingly fabricating evidence and scenarios to such point as, in one case, John Dehlin has won a defamation suit against Jenn Kamp. And I think we will see play out a similar result in the Owens v. Echard situation as well. So let's start by talking about the part that gets me the most excited, which is actually the Mormon part, because the similarities in what I think is an underlying mental health issue, and I think, in my opinion, it's an underlying personality disorder. There seems to be some common ground between these two women and these two court cases, one of which is probably more public and prominent than the other because the Mormon space is a little smaller than the Bachelor Nation space. So let's take a look at some of those things. It's my thinking that, aside from personality matches, I think, there seems to be, with this type of person, a habit to abuse the legal system. And that abuse seems to come from a multitude of angles of trying to silence the other side from telling what seems to often be a more factual version of the story. It seems to not be uncommon with certain types of people who use the judicial system for their own selfish means to do everything they can to lie about the other person, to defame them, to try and control the situation so that only their narrative can be shared. And that, of course, the whole intent there is to shut down any cross-examination or any questioning of the rather audacious and often outrageous claims against the other party. So let's begin with Jenn Kamp. And let's talk about just sort of the overview of the cases and the restraining orders and all the things that go along with Jenn Kamp versus John Dehlin and the Open Stories Foundation. So here's just a couple pictures of Jenn Kamp and Laura Owens. Jenn, of course, had her own podcast trying to, in my view of things, poach viewership from Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation. And then we have to the right the incontrovertible and, at least in this screen grab, somewhat scary looking Laura Owens. Both of these women are outrageously litigious, in my view. Jenn Kamp has gone after numerous methods of trying to get restraining orders and those kinds of things, trying to close off the ability of John Dehlin to discuss anything. Laura Owens has done the same. She's done cease and desist. She's got her lawyer making threats, all kinds of things to try and shut down. And what's interesting that hasn't happened in either of these cases or in some of the other ones that I've seen yet is the application of anti-SLAPP laws. And in various states, those are in various forms, but in most cases, the intent of those is to combat people like these two women who use litigation and seemingly vexatious litigation to try and silence their opponents. It seems to be a fairly common tactic, and it seems to be fairly typical with what I think is this type of, in my view, a personality disorder. So just looking at some of the overview of the Kamp versus Dehlin situation. Let's see. Can I make this bigger? I think I can. There we go. Let's just talk about sort of a basic timeline. So Jenn Kamp was, for a very brief time, it seems, supposedly January through September of 2022. So a couple years ago already. She was an employer, hired as director of operations, and she was eventually a co-host on the Mormon Stories podcast. So she was employed by the Open Stories Foundation, and either through charm or whatever means, sort of wanted to get in there on camera. That doesn't seem to be a surprise to me in what I know about such things. That led to some disagreements about her employment requirements, her duties, the compensation. She was accused of overpaying herself, I believe, on more than one occasion. I'm going to include also some sort of sourcing. So a lot of these I'm going to reference the excellent and very diagnostically accurate and very clean and professional analysis from Radio Free Mormon. So a lot of those will have RFM tags and Radio Free Mormon's episode numbers. So if you want to go back and review the hours, and I do mean this, hours if not days of footage, including some of the audio from the court records that RFM collected. Jenn Kamp seems to have used social leverage from her time working for OSF to launch her own podcast, which I'm not going to name here because, well, my observations, I think she's lost quite a number of subscribers as this story plays out. But she also seemingly has used that connection, also trying to start life coaching business. It seems like she's had a number of careers. I saw somewhere that she was also a photographer and had some sort of photography business. what her career is just kind of curious. It seems like she doesn't settle into much of one, and something happens and then she's on to another. That's just my opinion. Next point, Kamp had unprofessional and emotional outbursts when she was held accountable or not allowed her way. We'll hear some of these things. I'm going to use some of the audio from one of the hearings. Supposedly, she made sexual harassment inferences against John Dehlin. That comes out in various points of the hearings. Kamp and the OSF board had investigations and meetings. That comes from Mormon Discussions podcast. Jenn Kamp was eventually terminated from Mormon Stories and OSF. Shortly thereafter, she filed a lawsuit against John Dehlin and the Open Stories Foundation, who countersues. Kamp frequently, so it would seem, posts false and defamatory information on her streaming and social media platforms. Open Stories Foundation files an injunction against her. She files an anti-stalking petition against John Dehlin. There's a case number for that. That's RFM podcast 289. Kamp is denied a permanent injunction against Dehlin after hearing, in which they have a 4-hour trial, the audio of which in its entirety can be heard on RFM number 270. In retaliation against RFM's bringing this story to the public, and of course, court cases and hearings are a matter of public record unless sealed. So RFM was kind enough to chase down audio of these hearings. In response to that, Jenn Kamp filed a bar complaint against RFM for discussing these cases. That's RFM episode 293. Another participant, I believe the name was Janet Cox, filed a bar complaint against RFM along with Jenn Kamp. And RFM talks about this in greater detail on number 307. Later, not surprisingly, Jenn Kamp loses her bar complaint against RFM, episode 323. Jenn Kamp files a lawsuit in response to that against RFM, number 328. This just keeps going and going. Kamp's lawsuit against RFM is dismissed, episode 330. Another connection to Jenn Kamp files a bar complaint against RFM. That's episode 331. As the case develops, Jenn Kamp tries to remove Judge Faust from the case, episode 340. In this next one, we'll talk about Jenn Kamp and her credibility issues, for which we have audio courtesy of RFM and episode number 341. Jenn Kamp loses her defamation case against John Dehlin, episode number 345. And more recently, within the last few days, Jenn Kamp is ordered to take down defamatory content against John Dehlin. That's episode 348. And while I didn't see this directly, I saw some little screen captures, I think it was in this episode, where in response to her losing this case against John Dehlin, she starts reposting all these things accusing him of the most abhorrent things on her own podcast and trying to frame them as her opinion, as if to sort of scoot First Amendment issues after the court rules against her and rules in favor of John Dehlin and his defamation case, which I believe was a countersuit against Jenn Kamp. So she starts reposting all this trash, and the legal team for Open Stories Foundation filed an emergency injunction against her, in which the court ordered to take down all of that garbage that she was posting. And it's likely that as this reaches some sort of conclusion, that Judge Faust, who's overseeing this case, who's presiding on this case, will most likely award substantive damages for awarding them to John Dehlin, a judgment against Jenn Kamp, because this woman can't stop herself. And there's a nice little excerpt I'll try and hit on in the first part, where she has a certain viewpoint, and she's not going to change it because she believes that, well, her interpretation of reality is the only one that should be heard. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. Quite honestly, when I heard the trial the first time, and I recently re-listened to it preparing for this, I was shocked that Judge Faust, being a very kindly judge, it seems, just let this woman go on and on and on. She has had constant motions that she's tried to write pro se after losing her legal counsel, to have him reconsider and reconsider and reconsider, because she can't stand not to get her way. And she throws temper tantrums in the court. She goes outrageously wild in her accusations towards opposing counsel. It's extraordinary how she wasn't slapped with some contempt, because I think, in my opinion, she absolutely deserved it. She could have used some time in jail to have a little bit of reality brought in front of her face, which I think she's just unable to do. I think in my opinion, her conditions prevent her from seeing reality. And, there need to be some professionals involved in this, I think, for her benefit, to get beyond this and lead a useful and productive life that's not just going to keep attacking one person for things that didn't happen, but because of what seems to be her past. And she talks about her abusive past, which may or may not be true. She talks about child sex abuse being in the Mormon Church, which I think actually there is some validity to. We hear more and more about child abuse in the Mormon Church. I can't get through social media without seeing what I would call ambulance chaser legal things, advertisements on social media. Have you been abused by people in the Mormon Church? Click here, class action type lawsuits, or what seem to be that. It could just, I don't click on them, but I see them flying by all the time. And more recently, I'm starting to see ones for the Catholic Church appearing again, but they're frequent. They're frequent on my social media to see these things about, have you been abused by the Mormon Church? And, well, while I'm talking about opinions, I wouldn't be surprised if the war chest the church has been amassing for the last several decades, for which the SEC charged them a fine for concealing all of these enormous hundreds of billions of dollars of assets, wasn't to help fund the eventuality of dealing with class action cases of abuse and so on and so forth. Just my view. I could be totally wrong, but it's rather coincidental they were just quietly amassing money for which they never spent. And it's an extraordinary rainy day fund, but I think they saw some things coming down the lane and decided to start investing in high quantities should that ever happen. Because it seems to me it was the situations and the scandals and the cover-ups with the Catholic Church started bubbling up in the 90s, and I think they saw that train coming in their direction. The headlight was getting brighter, and they had this, well, the smarts, I suppose you could say, to just start amassing a financial war chest for when they could no longer fight those off and try to pay people off. We've seen podcasts and other people talk about abuse and non-disclosure agreements that church lawyers, Kurt McConkie, write up and so on and so forth. It's not new news, but anyhow, back to Jenn Kamp. I wouldn't doubt that maybe she did have some sort of abuse in her history. I recall thinking about a radio show. Well, for me, it was a radio show in my early teens. It was also a TV show on MTV, of all things. Loveline, with comedian Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew Pinsky, who was a physician and specialized more in addiction medicine. You can actually see Dr. Drew appearing in weight loss bodybuilding commercials. It's rather strange to me, but anyhow, in a number of those Loveline episodes with Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew, they had this uncanny knack. They would hear a voice of a certain caliber that would sound younger than the age of the person calling in to talk about whatever problem it was on the show. And I swear 9 times out of 10, they nailed it every time. And Dr. Drew would say, have you been abused as such and such an age? And there would usually be a sort of a sheepish yes. And it was most noticeable, I think, for women. I catch a similar vibe from Jenn Kamp when she talks. She's a woman in her 40s, her mid 40s, if I'm not mistaken. Yet at times she has a super young sounding voice that sort of betrays her actual age. And there seems to be a connection, just comparing those experiences I'm aware of hearing a physician talk about, or having a physician identify someone just by their voice who's likely been the recipient of sexual abuse. And then seeing that same sort of voice come up in someone like Jenn Kamp. Now, I can't say the same thing about Laura Owens because her voice is entirely different. So I'm not sure if there's any correlation there. But correlation doesn't equal causation. It's just a little bit of a speculative thought. But if what Jenn Kamp says about her past is true, that she was in fact abused, then that lends some credibility to the fact that her voice sounds young, that maybe there was some trauma. And yes, I'm not a psychologist. I am just voicing my opinion. But there does seem to be a connection there between young sounding voices, super young against their age, and there being actual abuse. But for Jenn Kamp to run around the internet publicly and try and pin that history or past on someone who did not commit it towards them is a legal problem. And it's gone against her substantively in all the correct ways based upon the law. So let's talk about some of the audio content here. Let's get into some of that good stuff. So this is from that particular episode of RFMs, and I'm not going to play the whole thing because it goes on for hours, but there's some interesting excerpts where Jenn is talking, and it's unfathomable. I wish there was video because, I mean, you can see how she would probably be presenting herself in court, and it's just extraordinary. The words alone are outrageous, and much of the time, and her need to be in control is also outrageous. And Judge Faust is, in my view, way too kind to her to allow this sort of behavior in court. But to some extent, she gets away with the behavior, but she doesn't win any points on legal grounds. So I'm going to skip around through this. And just to provide a little bit of context, we have in the courtroom the Judge Robert Faust, who is a relation to the late member of the first presidency of the LDS Church, but that doesn't really bear much here, although in some of her court proceedings, as I understand it, she tried to use that as leverage to get him recused, and she tried to use other things to get Judge Faust removed from the case. Mostly her claiming, well, you didn't give me my way, Judge Faust. You know what? I should use the voice for that.
Judge Faust, you didn't give me my way. I was thinking about getting you removed from this case.
And, I have to point out something else that annoys me about Jenn Kamp. And I don't know if this can be classified as a speech impediment, but her propensity to add Ks to ing words. So thinking is not just thinking, it's thinking, or you're wrong. And there's always kind of this voiced K at the end of ing words, and it drives me batty. So I might make a little bit of fun of that because it's bizarre. It's an affectation that I'm not sure if this is related to what I believe is the underlying disorder, or if this is something else. I don't know. Some of it doesn't make sense. I've never heard someone of her background have that kind of vocalization. Yeah, I don't know. Make of it what you will, but if I stop and use a voice, I can't help it because, well, we need a little comedic value in all this heavy stuff. So anyhow, people in the courtroom, the judge, Jenn Kamp, who is pro se, that means that she is not represented by anyone. She's representing herself. She's by herself. Her legal counsel has walked away from this because she has no more money, so she says. That's probably true. There was a statement in other parts where they've had to sell her beloved farm to pay for all this litigation. There were claims that she spent between, who knows, $200,000, $300,000 trying to go after John Dehlin. Why she wasn't labeled a vexatious litigant, I don't know, but I think she's on the verge. even before we get to the later parts, more recently, of this court and these proceedings. So anyhow, here we also have John Dehlin's legal counsel, Jenn Kamp, who's representing them, and what's the other guy's name? Oh, I've totally forgotten now. Dratz, and it's not on my notes. We won't slight him his name. It's out there if you really want to find it. You can dig through RFM stuff. It's worth a listen to. But we have John's legal counsel making lots of statements, but I'm going to focus mostly on Jenn and her responses, because really they're the entertainment gold in all of this. The rest of it's rather procedural and as one might expect in a courtroom from competent legal counsel and the judge, and just, in my view, absolute raving lunacy from Jenn Kamp. So we'll start off with some of the commentary by Dehlin's counsel.
To see if they picked it up. So her saying that he had months and months of it is just not true. We wish we had it because we think it would be very helpful to our case. But ultimately, she asked for the stuff after discovery was over. She asked for it after the dates had ran, and she asked for it after she had exhausted all of her discovery requests. And that's why it should be denied. If we had the surveillance footage, though, we would offer it because we think it would be very helpful to our case. With respect to the subpoenas, the court denied the motion for the subpoenas on the same day, on February 20th, 2024, in docket 511. And the court denied those subpoenas for a number of reasons. It denied them because they were issued without proper notice and 9 days after the close of fact discovery. They were duplicative of previously quashed motions. And I know November 16th was a long time ago, but during that hearing, the court very specifically told Ms. Kamp that if she wanted to reissue subpoenas, she needed to follow very specific procedures. She didn't do that when she issued these subpoenas. They were virtually identical to the initial subpoenas that the court quashed because they were improper. There wasn't any excuse for this delay because the court had told her on November 16th that she could reissue the subpoenas then, and yet she waited until 9 days after the close of discovery. I believe the court also denied it on the basis that some of the information requested constituted trade secrets that she did.
So here we have just sort of the forward of Jenn trying to keep refiling the same motions, trying to get the judge to rehear her side. And the judge keeps saying, no. She couldn't follow discovery procedures and deadlines, and she kept trying to beg the court. And we'll get to the part where she accuses the court of not listening to her and not hearing her side. I'll probably be doing that a lot. I'm sorry. It's going to be a thing. There's going to be a lot of her trying to get the judge to agree with her, and the more she whines and complains about it, she thinks she's earning points. And she has no clue that she's digging her hole even deeper. Let's see, can I move this along a little bit faster?
Didn't have appropriate access to. So the court has fully addressed each of the issues that she's raised. It's done it in its orders, and it's been brought before the judge. I would like to mention that these very same issues are in a motion to compel that she recently filed. So if the court rules on this today, we would like to be excused from having to respond to that motion.
Can I respond?
Yeah, okay, here she goes.
Is Ms. Kamp wrong?
Ms. Tomczyk?
Ms. Kamp, is Ms. Tomczyk wrong that I
Yes.
ruled on them?
No, you...
Yes, Your Honor. She's not only wrong, she's wrong in so many ways, and I'm going to tell you. Just wait until I tell you how many ways Ms. Tomczyk is wrong.
I did rule.
You ruled on some of them that included them, yes.
Okay, so what did I not rule on?
Can I explain
No.
the things that she said that were wrong?
I'm trying to make sure that we hear any issues that you had that were not ruled on. That's the focus.
I guess my point is that you ruled on information from her that that was wrong. like that she either manipulated the court with evidence, like only giving parts of the evidence, or lied basically to you, and then you ruled upon her proposed order with the lies within it. And so it's hard to see motions being signed when there's lies within the motion that I've given evidence against. So it's frustrating to me, because if I can start with...
It's a pretty strong accusation.
These are very, very dangerous waters for anyone to enter in. A lawyer doing this could get sanctioned up the yin-yang and probably get some kind of disciplinary action from the bar. So, there's a lot of leeway given to pro se people because they're so inept and incompetent. It's not a situation I would ever want to find myself in a courtroom, trying to represent myself against people who are many years more educated in procedure and practice of law. This is just foolishness. And to, in open court, essentially accuse opposing counsel of manufacturing lies against her is extraordinary. It's dangerous. And it deserves...
Your Honor, Miss Kamp lied to the court. She's not telling you my side, which is the only side you should ever be listening to. You need to stop listening to her.
It's great. It's just crazy.
Saying that she lied to the court.
I know, but she did. So I don't know however else to show you.
She did. Can you prove it?
We can bring up the motions, like her proposed motions, and I can tell you what within them is not.
Motions Jenn Kamp lost.
Correct, but I do.
Well,
if I could just have a moment.
Your Honor, if I can just be in control of the court for the rest of the day until you listen to me and agree with me, and you give John Dehlin everything that's coming to him, because he did things to me, and you need to agree with me, Your Honor. And if you don't, then I'm going to sue you too.
She's crazy. Watch this. It gets wild. She takes over the court. Well, you can't watch it. You have to hear it.
Because I don't know all the fancy words. I don't know how to present it in this way. But the thing is that so basically in December, I ran out of money to have someone represent me.
Boo-hoo.
Here. I emailed the court, your court, and asked for...
Your Honor, I need to tell you the sob story. You need to listen to me, Your Honor, because I lost money and you need to take pity on me. I lost everything. I have to represent myself. Oh, I said that wrong. I lost everything.
She's insufferable.
An extension so that I would have time in learning all the...
I need time to learn how to become a lawyer, Your Honor, so I can try and defend myself.
years that she's had, and trying to get to know all emotions and how to reply to them the right way and all the things. I just needed time. I also had, the holidays. I also had 2 daughters' weddings within that month. And one of them being out of the country for a couple weeks.
I'm so busy, Your Honor. This case is an imposition to me. I had all these mom things to do that were far more important than dealing with a court case. So you need to take pity on me, Your Honor, and let me berate John Dehlin as much as I want. That's what you need to let me do, Your Honor.
No extensions were responded to by the court or them. The appellate court did. They responded right away, and they gave me an extension to be able to respond to that. So not only am I trying to go through evidence that was never given to me by Hepworth Legal, and going through all of that evidence, thousands and thousands of things, which I still haven't been all the way through.
The voice gets really shaky. Wait for the waterworks. You can't see them, but they're coming.
To be honest, thousands of evidence, 2 daughters' weddings, the holiday, an appellate court appeal, the end of discovery coming in less than a month, you know, and trying to reply to all their motions before that happens, trying to learn all of these things. I'm not asking for, like, you to, like, give me the world. All I'm asking was for an extension to learn the things, to go through the evidence that I had, and to respond properly.
I want you to break the rules, Your Honor, so that you can side in my favor. That's what I want. It's just too much going to all these weddings and having holidays. I can't do it. I'm not superhuman. Oh, wait.
Wait, I'm foreshadowing too much.
And I tried to ask for that and was not given that by this court. And to be honest, I wasn't. And so I asked for hearings. You know, I did multiple times because I didn't know how to do it properly, and I was overwhelmed with everything asked of me.
I don't think she could file a motion properly, and from what I've seen, they're not very good motions. And the one she had by whatever friend, the tax lawyer who retired in 2017, litigating tax stuff for the government, didn't do her any favors. There's a great, one of RFM's episodes talks about that lawyer who popped in to write a motion for her and then jumped out as he filed the motion, essentially. And it was pretty bad. It accused the court of, well, about the same things that Jenn is, accusing the court of improprieties and all kinds of things. So it didn't help her case. It was stupid. And I think it risked that particular lawyer's bar card. Not that he used it a whole lot. I guess if he retired, I don't know how that works once you retire, if you keep your licensure active or how that works for lawyers.
Also working 40 hours a week and being a mom and a wife, you know, and trying to be there for my daughters during their weddings. It's not that I was trying. I don't care what they want. I will give them everything. Have my bank accounts, subpoena my bank, go through to the transactions. I don't care, because what I said is the truth, and I will never say different.
And there is the immovable wall that is Jenn Kamp. You can't tell her anything different. How she sees the world is the only way she's ever going to see it. I think the judge should have shut it down at this point, because clearly it wasn't going to go anywhere, and it was just going to get worse from that. And indeed it does.
I am the victim of him. I am. I'm not asking for the world. I'm not. I'm asking for me not to be superhuman.
So we've made a ruling on it already.
But you didn't hear me. And
He did this to me, Your Honor. He did things to me, Your Honor. And you need to listen to me and not listen to him. I'm the victim, Your Honor. Not him. Me. I never do anything wrong, Your Honor.
I didn't know how to convey to you because I didn't have a proper amount of time to get and give you what you needed. I'm not asking. I just needed time, and I wasn't given it. I wasn't. And you didn't hear me, and I did do everything to submit. I did.
The whining and the sobbing is just out. This must have been a very awkward trial for the other side to just sit through and listen to all this nonsense. Because I believe this is part of the show. This is part of her manipulation tactics, and this is what she does. And according to all of the testimony by board members of OSF, this is how she operates. Things don't go her way. She has meltdowns, and I could see her yelling and getting pretty nasty. Just with this kind of emotional tactic towards the judge, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand some basic things about how courts work. But because things don't go her way, then we have to resort to tactics. Emotional tactics, accusatory tactics, all kinds. She'll throw everything at you to try and get her way, or until she gets her way. That's why I think this is part of a disorder.
Thank you. Counsel, anything else? on these?
Is there anything specific that you have questions about? I mean, I think
I want to fast forward a little bit because there's some more smart lawyering going on by the other side. Oh, let's just kind of skip ahead a little bit because really all I care about is what she says. That is Miss Kamp. Let's go about there. Let's see what we get there.
Just slip through the cracks.
I just think you would have ruled on him differently if you would have allowed me to speak.
That's...
You would have seen my side, Your Honor, if you just let me own everything and be in charge. That's what would have happened. Because I'm thinking about it.
different.
Okay, but one of them...
You're mixing apples and oranges.
I know, but they affect me the same way in this court case, so...
Okay, is there anything that I haven't ruled on?
Yes, the request from hearing that was on the 5th of December, and then the 2nd of February, and then the 12th of February, and then the 27th.
So this is her trying to get motions that have been denied reheard and reheard. And she just keeps trying this throughout this hearing. Some of it I may skip through because it gets repetitious at some point, but I want to stick to the more dramatic parts because that's the entertainment value we offer here.
Of February, and then the 3rd of 6th, or the March 6th, and then April 5th, where I asked you to please be heard and speak to you, and I did request to submit within those 7 requests. It was never ruled upon, any of those, but the motions within it, I guess some of them weren't ruled upon maybe, but some were. Motion to file the counterclaim and add additional parties, which I still wish I could speak on today because
It's already been ruled on.
I know. It's okay, we'll do it in a different court.
Okay.
To compel discovery and impose sanctions. I don't believe he's...
I was going to let that slide, but maybe I shouldn't. So obviously she says, well, we'll do it in a different court. That's a little bit of a veiled threat that it's probably a promise that she's going to appeal anything that doesn't go her way. Why am I not surprised? This starts getting juicy in a minute or so where she really has a meltdown. So I'm going to keep going on this.
Okay, I've ruled on those, did I not?
I know, but you ruled on them without giving me anything. Like, I don't know why you ruled that way. Like, I don't know why.
You ruled on them against me, Your Honor. You shouldn't have done that. You should have only found in my favor, Your Honor. You're wrong.
You ruled that I get no evidence and he gets everything from me.
Okay. I think if you read the rulings, it will explain to you why the rulings were made.
You sign her proposed rules almost every time.
Yes, that's the way that it's done.
I know, but you don't.
Both counts. If you need to understand something, and maybe we can get this clearer, and we can get in there.
This is how incompetent she is. And maybe it's not surprising to some people who are used to getting their way and who suffer from problems where their reality doesn't line up with the real world and they just don't get it up here. There's no way for them to get it up there. Where the winning side on a motion gets, in most courts, to write that order, and they write out what the judge ordered, and they format it and so forth, and it gets submitted for the signature. And of course, Jenn being the ultimate perpetual victim, because she never does anything wrong, right? Sees that as a personal attack. It's like, oh, you're only siding with them because you're only signing their orders. She has no concept how it even works at the fundamental level. So there's no chance she could really realistically represent herself. And the funny thing I find about some of this is kind of the hubris that's parallel to people like sovereign citizens or Moorish Americans and people of that ilk that believe that laws don't apply to them. And, if you want to fall down a rabbit hole, look up sovereign citizens on the interwebs. That's where I got my start in my fascination with Law Tube, was these crazy people who think law is anathema until they need it for their benefit, in which case the law should always cave in their favor. It's the same sort of mentality. And I think there's a fundamental mental health issue at play in just about all of them. Again, my opinion, I'm not a psychologist nor a therapist, but that's what I think is going on here.
The court does not necessarily draft every single order that is.
I don't expect you to.
Well, you just implied that you did.
No, I'm just...
Because I signed her order that she proposed.
Right.
Normally what the court does is ask the winning counsel to prepare the order.
Like I said, the winning counsel to prepare the order.
Okay, that's standard in every case. If the party prevails on a motion, the court will direct counsel to prepare the order for its signature so the court doesn't have to do it.
Right, which is fine.
So,
I just know that you're
just implying that there was some sort of bias or prejudice because I'm signing her orders that she submits to you. And I'm trying to tell you that's not the case. Okay?
You told us in the November 20th hearing that you did not read my motion before you signed her proposed motion.
On the one back before, but we got that straightened out in that hearing.
I'm just saying the next time it was submitted, you said the same thing. Like
The order was submitted, it was the same thing, but we straightened it out and got the information, the evidence in that hearing. Okay. What else is missing? The fact that I've signed her orders explains the reasons why I've made the rulings. What I'm getting, Ms. Ms. Kamp, is you are not accepting, it seems, the rulings and the decisions of the court.
I'm accepting.
And as she said, she will never accept them because her view of the world is the only one that's right. She said it earlier. We heard it.
You attempt to revisit them and ask them to be looked at again or to give you a second or a third or multiple opportunities to present the same things again. You can't.
Well, that's what I'm wanting to speak about, if I can speak about them with something that's already ruled upon, because you didn't read it. You said you would. If we filed it again, we filed it again. You said you did read it, and you filed against it because it was close to the end of discovery, which I understand, but then discovery was extended. And the plaintiffs did not give me discovery. They did not produce because they were withholding discovery until the 19th of December. The 19th of December. That is after those two motions were put in. So having the new discovery, this new evidence that I didn't get until the 19th of December of 2023, within 20 days, I rewrote a counterclaim, including the evidence that is damning to them, and included that in the counterclaim, adding the additional persons, and then resubmitted it.
And RFM talks about trying to be added to her lawsuit where she tries to claim he's a resident of Summit County, Utah, which RFM is not. Anybody who knows, hi RFM, you're that way from me. I feel like I have to genuflect anytime RFM comes up because I would love to just encounter the guy in my regular travels in the area because I know roughly where he's at. I won't reveal any details of that because those aren't my details to reveal, but he seems like a fascinating guy, and I know he's not very far away. So maybe someday I'll just kind of cross paths at some eatery somewhere in that neck of the woods, and we can have a fascinating chat about this world. Because, well, he does legal things too, and that's just, it's intriguing. And I appreciate his analysis as someone of the legal profession. I'm not, but I'm fascinated by it.
It's not because I'm just resubmitting things over and over and over again because they're the same thing and I just don't like your ruling. That's not true. That's not true. I'm submitting them because they're withholding evidence until the 19th of December. So from the 19th of December forward...
Full meltdown coming. Alert. Alert.
That's all I had. And from the 19th of December forward to the end of discovery is 24 days. So in 24 days, I have appellate court appeal. I have $2 weddings. I have all those things I listed previously. Do you see, like, it's not just what they're saying. It's not just,
Do you see, Your Honor, what I'm going through? It's not just those things. It's all this stuff. And you need to let me have my way, Your Honor.
just hate you, Judge Faust, and I just think you're just wrong. It's just that, like, I'm trying, I got the evidence the 19th of December. They withheld it knowingly. Till then. And I have weeks to do everything I just listed. That's unhuman.
Such a victim.
Thank you.
Don't thank her.
You disclosed it within time frames, correct?
On the date the court ordered us to, based on when they served their discovery, yes.
And you didn't delay in providing it?
We did not.
They did delay in providing it because they had it beforehand. They were holding on to a privileged waiver or something that was named that, something to do with privileged something. They were willingly withholding it, even though they should have not done that.
Something privileged, Your Honor. Something, I don't know, something. But you should ignore it, something.
They produced it by the time of the deadline, so they were there. There was nothing.
I know.
What they did.
But I also requested an extension that you never answered. And I submitted an extension that you never answered.
Okay, and let's talk about the request for extensions and so forth. We talked to you about
the
rules
pouting.
that you have to follow in making motions to submit.
I know,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You have to follow the rules.
I know. But you're asking me to be
Submit.
superhuman.
No, I'm not.
You are.
It's superhuman to follow the rules, according to Jenn Kamp.
In 20 days, you're asking me to do things that one person is not able to do.
Okay. I find then that there is many outstanding pending motions from.
There is.
Okay, Ms. Kamp, tell me what it is.
There is.
Point it out to me. Let's
Okay.
deal with it right now.
Let's do it.
The incredulity.
Okay.
What is it?
Request for extension for expert witnesses. It's number 4 on the paper that your court provided to me.
Okay,
Docket 570.
and I think there was an opposition that was filed to that, right, Ms. Kemp, by you. 572 or 322. And then
And it's sniffling, the constant sniffling.
573. And let's see. Was that notice up with a request to submit? You may have made a motion, but do you have a request to submit to me to rule on it?
I didn't because it was.
There was the problem. Remember what we talked about earlier? To
Right.
avoid the problems, the rules say that they're not given to the judge or submitted until a request to submit has been given, and they can sit there for years. Okay? That's why I took the effort to explain to you in my request for rulings for you to understand what must be done in order for your matters to come to my attention for me to rule on it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, and I didn't because I knew we had this hearing, so I just was bringing it here.
So there's no request to submit on that extension, and there still isn't. I can't make a ruling on it.
Let's fast forward a little bit. Let's get to some other better stuff here.
say one other thing before you turn the time over to her.
This is co-counsel for John Dehlin speaking, whose name I can't remember. Maybe I'll look it up and add it or something.
We all heard Ms. Kamp a few minutes ago say that she wanted the first available trial date in June. So that really cuts against her need for experts. That would have been even more of an impossibility had you given her the date that you wanted in June.
Thank you. Please.
So yes, I did miscalculate that by what I read on the court website. Sorry, I was thrown off by what he just said.
Let's get to some more whining and complaining.
Well, I do, but you're not accepting the claim.
No, yeah, because you don't have any counterclaim.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So it will come in a different lawsuit.
Tell me about the mental health.
See, this is a vendetta for her. It'll come in a different lawsuit. I'm just going to keep suing until I get my way. I don't know how she's going to do that with no money, because she's not a successful litigant being pro se. I don't think.
The mental health is
Going to testify to what and to whom about what?
because of the videos shown and presented in evidence from the plaintiffs. For them, is showing insubordination and different kind of words that they're using. For me, it's a month of mental abuse by the hands of John Dehlin.
I was yelling and screaming at John Dehlin, Your Honor, but I'm going to say he was abusing me. Because insubordination to me means I'm being abused.
While working for him. I see that video, I see that shaking voice, and I see me standing up to a man that has abused me for over a month and a half as very differently than the way that they're portraying this video to be. And I would like another mental health professional to give their expert opinion on the gaslighting and manipulation and mental abuse within the video and my story.
She so desperately needs her reality to reflect the rest of the world, and it's just not factually possible. OSF came in well prepared with every bit of evidence they could muster up, which was a lot, I think. They could have had a little bit more if security footage had been kept longer, as the counsel says at the beginning, where I started. Jenn talks about video on the security cameras that she thinks John is hiding and hoarding, and that would be favorable to her, which in reality would most likely be far more favorable to John and their case. So, I mean, really, it's kind of a pity there wasn't, because I think it would just make things even more entertaining.
Have you gone to a mental health counselor?
Yes.
Yourself?
Yes.
Have you been receiving sessions and discussing and interacting with them about this mental health component that you have supposedly suffered at the hands of the plaintiff?
She's got a mental health component, in my view, but it wasn't caused by the plaintiff.
Yes.
And have you had any intention to designate your current mental health counselor as an expert?
No.
And isn't that interesting? Her own supposed current mental health professional, she doesn't want to get involved. And I wonder why. Maybe it wouldn't necessarily be flattering to her cause, but the details of that tend to be elusive in this case. If it were to really go after a significant trial, maybe some of that would come up. I don't know. I think she's just going to keep trying to dance around, hammering on her fictitious narrative, which really, if we get down to this, her whole position is to go out and punish John. And it's to go out and punish the Open Stories Foundation. And she just wants to make an absolute mess and hell of things to her benefit, even if it's not true. That's really the crux of all of this.
Because no.
Okay.
Since the beginning of this court case and all the way through it, I have kept my my medical, my husband, and my lawyer privilege, and I am not waiving it.
Okay. Thank you. Counsel, anything else before we move on? I'll give you a ruling on it at the end with all the other rulings.
Just briefly, Your Honor, the mental health is, as we understand, it's part of her counterclaim, which has been rejected by the court multiple times.
And she has to prove the counterclaim. She doesn't have it, so she doesn't need to designate a mental health counselor to prove that her mental health status and condition is part of proving her claim. So the need for a mental health counselor is not.
I object to that. It is very much important. It's what I said. It's what they're suing me about. They're suing me about defamation for what I said. What I said is what I need evidence for to go against what they're saying. It is important. It's what I said. I said I need the evidence to show what I said is true.
You have to give me the defense, Your Honor. You have to give me the evidence of everything that I was saying. This needs to be things you give to me, Your Honor.
You need your evidence of what you said will be your testimony on the stand of what it is that you said.
I know, but you're not letting me have evidence against that, whether in subpoenas or
I'm sorry, Ms.
production.
You don't understand the burden of proof here that we're talking about.
I'm trying to get it. That you're not allowing me to do so.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
This is
because
right.
You're past the deadlines. I'm sorry, I'm going to go ahead and deny.
This is right. You're ruling against me again, Your Honor. You're not giving my weight. I'm just going to pound the podium and pout because you didn't give me what I want, even though it's supposed to be me that provides my own defense. But you need to give it to me, Your Honor. I don't need to do a thing.
Deny your motion for the extension of times for experts here. Okay, we've tried to explain to you to have you understand why and the basis therefore, and you're arguing with us instead of trying to understand the basis.
No, I understand the basis. I'm asking for an exception. Sorry, I apologize.
You're talking over the top of me. You're not wanting to hear what it is that I'm trying to explain to you.
I'm trying to be in control, Your Honor, and I don't care what you say. I need to have what I need. And it's just... No.
I apologize.
Okay? All right, ruling's done. Let's move on. Okay, counsel, we have your three motions.
Your Honor, the first one that we think is more of a housekeeping matter that we can hopefully dispose of quickly is our attorney's fee request that you mentioned earlier. The court granted our request for fees on March 7th. We filed our affidavit. It has not been opposed by Ms. Kamp. So we'd request that the court enter that order for approximately $12,000 in attorney's fees.
Okay, Ms. Kemp, do you want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, which one was that?
Their motion for attorney's fees for the expenses that they incurred in dealing with and responding to.
He's already granted.
And I think they're going to get a whole lot more than just attorney's fees by the time this is all said and done. Just a hunch. I'm going to skip ahead a wee bit more because let's see. That's some of the better stuff, really. But as we get kind of further into this hearing, we get into the spoliation of evidence, which is the willful destruction of evidence that was requested by John Dehlin and counsel that Jenn Kamp more or less admitted to hiding or destroying because, well, she thought that evidence could be hidden and it could be deleted if it doesn't look in her favor. Isn't that weird? Imagine someone like her, just sort of tucking things away and deleting comments and claiming, well, they're private because, well, they must have been nasty. You're very naughty, Jen. Very, very naughty. So let's skip ahead to that.
I don't agree with her asking me the questions, telling me I have to answer them, and then using that against me. In D, the privilege was not waived in, again, responding to questions by Jenn Kamp, even though she was already warned by my...
I should sum up a little bit. First, in some of the motions from John Dehlin's counsel is discussion about her being Jenn Kamp, trying to maintain that she has privacy privileges, and therefore some of the information that was being requested in discovery shouldn't be turned over because, well, she thinks they're private, and she keeps hammering on these whole privacy things and privileged communications, which when it comes to discovery, it's not true. So she uses that as an excuse to defend herself from hiding and deleting and destroying evidence that's useful in this case. I think I want to skip beyond that because it's just more of the usual back and forth and pouting and whining.
I'm not sure I understand what
Aren't you just seeking how many donors stopped contributing or attending her channels and so forth?
We're looking at the overall, so we're talking about bank statements. We're looking at the overall contributions. So there are three claims that we've made. One of them is trademark infringement along with defamation. We're looking to see who was contributing money to her podcast based on her trademark infringement and also on the defamatory statements that she made.
But you're looking to find out who no longer contributes or who no longer subscribes to her channel, right? Isn't that what you were telling me?
But my understanding
to John's channel,
people to find out why they were no longer involved.
Well, my understanding is they're suing, or they're suing me because of people they say have stopped donating because of me. That's what is in this trial. That's what's in their case, is that specific people who used to donate to them, when they saw my podcast, stopped donating to them. So I need a list of the people who they're saying stopped donating to them so that I can...
This is your discovery request again for this.
I have. That's what I'm saying, and you have denied it.
So why are we talking about it?
Because it's so important. These are giving me nothing to defend myself with.
Okay.
How? You tell me, how am I supposed to defend myself when I am not allowed to get anything?
I'm supposed to defend myself, Your Honor, against all these claims and all these nasty things that I actually said. If you don't give me things that let me defend myself, Your Honor, how to sob, whine.
How? Tell me how.
I can't give you legal advice except for you to follow the rules.
I did follow the rules.
Okay, well, we're not going there again. Do you have anything else in regards to their response for their sanctions against you for items that you have not produced or that you have spoiled? That's what we're dealing with right now in this motion. I want to make sure
I've given them everything they've asked for.
Okay.
No, she didn't. She did not. She concealed the vast majority of her transactions that were being requested through discovery. She blacked out 90-some% of the information that she should have disclosed, and she hid a bunch of other things, and she deleted things, and it got kind of nasty from a procedural standpoint, and it sure doesn't look good for her when she's hiding. You can't have the sword and shield of being a victim and then trying to hide the evidence. Because, I mean, if the facts support your side, they will be evident. If the facts do not support your side, there's far more reason to make them go away. And that seems to be the court's position at the end of all this. That's exactly what happened. She made anything that looked unfavorable to Jenn Kamp's rather fanciful and outrageous claims they don't exist. Some strange reason. All the comments she said in this women's group text just magically deleted themselves. And all of the financial information, other than small handfuls of money to her podcast, are mysteriously redacted. Yet she claims that she gave everything they needed. It's outrageous. She's just outrageous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Homcheck.
I'm just going to sit down and huff now, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'll try to not jump around here, but the argument jumped around a bit, so I'm trying to.
Being the counsel for the opposing party where you've got a person like this must just be extraordinarily frustrating. With proper counsel and representation, this probably could have taken 30 minutes, maybe an hour if there was a lot to argue on other motions and other... It's just a mess. It's a pro se mess. And Jenn Kamp seems to be the queen of making messes, at least as far as it concerns John Dehlin.
To be as succinct as possible. I think that the argument that we just heard just further demonstrates that Ms. Kamp is willing to say whatever she needs to say to help her at any given moment, and it's not always consistent with what she said in the past.
There it is. There's the very accurately analyzed counter-argument. Jen will say and do whatever she needs to get herself off the hook, and then try and spin that narrative to make the other person look guilty. This is kind of classic reverse psychology in a way. If there's no evidence that can be generated or that she's hidden that makes her, look as guilty as someone else, that's the ploy at least, She redacts all of the nasty things she says if she hides things, which she ends up not doing so well later when I'm foreshadowing again, when the court orders her to take down the defamatory. I like that better. How it wants her to take down things she starts to say that she keeps rebroadcasting because she can't let this go. This is going to be a hill she dies on, I think, at least metaphorically speaking. Or she's going to kill the resources of her family. I don't envy her husband. Not in the least. Let's see, what else can we look at? I mean, this just goes on and on and on. We're towards the end of it, but I think there's another hour's worth. This is a 4-hour hearing, folks. It's... I hope when I get back from the vacation that the Owens v. Echard stuff isn't this verbose. It's probably going to be worse with David Gingras, Laura Owens, rather flamboyant counsel. We'll get to her in a minute. Oh, let's see. She talks about giving everything, blah, 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 blah. I'm just looking at my time notes here a little bit. Let's just kind of skip to the end. I'm growing tired of the whining. 4:16, 4:20. Let's get to the end. Somewhere about here.
In their proposed orders, and then I feel like you read the proposed orders and you don't read the evidence that I give you. And I know I'm repeating myself, I understand. But
Yes, you are repeating yourself. It's like an obsessive compulsive bipolar loop where you just keep going in circles and in circles and in circles, hoping that eventually people will cave because they're so worn out from you being, in my opinion, a controlling bitch. It is what it is. That's, some people don't like language like that. This is just how I see it. She's a controlling bitch. And the problems she has make her a controlling bitch. And I don't know how else you describe people like this unless you get into the psychological problems on a deeper level. And we start talking about official diagnoses and processes for her to become a better person and hopefully a more stable person. Because with the ups and downs of her kind of sing-songy, and then I'm not getting in my way, so I'm just going to fall apart. And Your Honor, you're not getting... The theatrics, the drama, whenever things don't go her way, it's off the Richter scale.
I know that this is the last moment I get to say something to you, so I just want to make you aware.
Thank you. Counsel, anything else before we adjourn for today?
We do have her motion for sanctions that I think we already heard, but I just want to confirm that you're going to issue a ruling on that so we don't have to respond.
Yeah, work the list. No, I don't. I'm kind of convinced it was the raw video, the surveillance camera, subpoenas, that's motions denied for the various reasons already set forth. It's one, old; two, untimely; three, hasn't been done. I think, was this the one that didn't have the request to submit on it?
Right, it hasn't been fully briefed yet.
Fully briefed. Okay. Well,
Can you take a look at the surveillance part of that motion? Because I feel like them spoliating the week of surveillance that they should have
No.
is the same spoliation that
They're doing the same. We should use the voice.
They're doing the same thing, Your Honor, that I did to them. It's only fair.
I love that voice. It might get lots of use. This is her, well, what about them thing. She thinks that the video, the security video they had, which is only kept for a certain amount of time, which wasn't required to be kept by the time they were served for discovery. So those recordings were lost and there were no backups. She's trying to make the argument that, well, I'm just doing to them what they did to me, and that doesn't go well with the court. And in just a moment, we get from Judge Faust a very accurate and, quite frankly, a very polite opinion of the judge about Miss Kamp's character.
I don't think you're correct. They've told us here, all of us, and they've made representations on the record. The surveillance video does not exist for the dates that you wanted. So there's no information to provide to you. There's none.
And you're going to give me that same courtesy of the things that I say are not there anymore.
But you'd be lying because you deleted them purposefully after you were served preservation notices as part of discovery. You evil woman.
It depends. Okay. Frankly, I'm just going to be very candid. I'm having a challenge trying to decide how much I believe you. I'm having a challenge trying to decide how much of your response and your actions, this manner and the way that you've conducted the discovery and the responses, the filing of your motions, etc., is based upon ignorance and lack of understanding of how to handle these things by not being a lawyer versus taking actions or steps to not provide the information or not make it available. You generally judge people based upon the things that they say and what they do. And the severe inconsistencies in your position in responding to things causes a lot of concern, frankly. I don't see a great deal of candor. I don't see a great deal of forthrightness.
Where, though?
In providing, and we're not having a discussion. I'm
Sorry.
just telling you my thoughts.
Okay.
In weighing your believability.
She can't hold her tongue to save her life. She has to butt in at every minute. So this is pretty much the end. So let's just cut to the chase here. Well, we're past the chase, I think. The judge very rightly points out that I have a hard time believing you, Miss Kamp. And he's right on. Yeah. Does this sound familiar to anyone following the Owens versus Echard thing? I'm hoping that the judge involved in that case in Arizona, which we'll get to in just a moment, has similar sort of reactions once all of that evidence hits the floor. And I'm going to regret not saying it live, but that's the way it goes when you plan vacation. There's some parallels here. So I think let's just call this good on Jenn Kamp. This is how the court systems play out. There's other hearings with her. It's the same sort of up and down roller coaster of sing-songy, and then I'm going to have emotional meltdowns every time I'm not getting my way. So that's par for the course for Jenn Kamp. Let's see, what's next on the slides? Oh, yes. This is I'm not going to play this. This is just RFM's recent coverage of the temporary injunction, I believe it was, to Jenn Kamp after this trial, where she starts reposting videos accusing John Dehlin of the same thing she was told not to post after she lost the defamation suit. And it was in John's favor that she was, in fact, defaming John Dehlin. But she couldn't help herself because she doesn't like being told no, and she's certainly going to be a sore loser. She starts reposting nasty things in great quantity. It sounded like more than 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 videos, trying to hide behind a First Amendment thing. This is what happened to me by John Dehlin, in my opinion, was sort of the titling of a number of those things. So she was trying to couch what the court determined were, in fact, defamatory comments about John Dehlin, and then using opinion and what would seem to be First Amendment privilege to be a shield so that she could keep saying those things that the court said, you can't say that, they're defamatory. But she goes on and does it anyhow. She gets slapped by the court. And the next step, which will probably happen in the next few weeks, if not months, I can't remember what the next hearing date was set. It may even be August, where it would seem that the next thing's going to be awarding John Dehlin damages for what this woman keeps saying. She can't keep her mouth shut because she feels so wronged that her viewpoint and that her perception of reality is not going to be humored by the court and by the legal system. But she's not going to rest with that. She's going to appeal at every step she can. She's going to probably file all sorts of other things to try and drag this out until she gets her way. But it's just going to keep digging her hole deeper and deeper until she's in utter ruins and maybe even ends up in prison. One of the court's orders was that if she keeps doing this, that she could face incarceration. And at this point, I think it would be warranted for her because she's not getting the message. And I don't think until there's some intervention by a lot of mental health analysis and other things, and maybe some good time away from society in prison or in jail, prison, incarcerated, it's not going to sink in, and it may never sink in. We'll see. The future is yet to be written here, and it may be kind of nasty and not so nice for her. But these are the choices she decided to make, to just keep dragging this out and just spin this rather bizarre reality where things happened to her and she needed a scapegoat, and John Dehlin was the target, unfortunately. On our next segment, we have the parallel with the Laura Owens, Clayton Echard scandal. Most of the outline here is background, so I'll just kind of rattle through what it is. And this has a lot of coverage on the YouTubes and lots of podcasting places. They include Dave Neal, host of Bachelor Nation News, who's also a comedian. This has been covered at great lengths by journalist Megan Fox. It's also covered by That Umbrella Guy, or Tug as he is affectionately known. There's some discussion by Legal Vices. There are some new players to this scene talking about this. Laura Knighty. There are some others. Reality Steve, who hosts a podcast. A number of people have been sued or attempted to be sued by Laura to shut them up. This thing's outrageous. We go from Mormon outrageous of, claiming sexual harassment and other nasty things to John Dehlin, to a woman who was claiming that she was getting magically pregnant with twins, and I think almost all of the situations that come up. So let's just go through the outline, because I'm going to rattle on forever. So she dated multiple men in California and Arizona. Some of those in the San Francisco area. That's, I think, where most of the California ones resided. Her father, Ron Owens, was a noted radio broadcaster and personality. Her mother, Jan Black, also, I think, goes by Elizabeth Owens. The multiple aliases of people in the public that do media and radio and that kind of thing, I find that odd for some reason. So it may be that the apple didn't fall far from the motherly tree in regards to how Laura Owens presents herself. But anyhow, that's a little background on who she is, just briefly. But she claimed to become pregnant in most cases with twins. Some of these cases seem like they're immaculate conception. At least they are with Clayton Echard. She has presented demonstratively fabricated evidence of pregnancies, including ultrasounds, medical testing results, medical professional reports, appointments, and so forth. And that comes from a multitude of sources covering this. Mentioned there, Dave Neal, Megan Fox, etc. In just about all of these cases, she offered to abort these alleged pregnancies if the men would agree to date her for a while. And if some of them agreed to a dating contract that she would present to them. Ironically, it seems all of the guys weren't interested in having kids, even though it seems like one or two of them may have actually been having sex. But they didn't want to have kids. She claims she got pregnant. I want to nickname Laura Owens the Black Widow. She wants to get pregnant. She entices these guys after claiming she's pregnant that, well, okay, I won't have the kids if you agree to be with me for a while. It's strange. It's strange. It's the same kind of strange in a different way from Jenn Kamp. So when the guys don't go along with these dating contracts, she threatens them by, well, I'm going to have the babies if you don't agree to this. So, sort of entrapping them into being a parent. Or the alternative to that was, if they refused that kind of idea and giving into that, she would threaten them with litigation. She's threatened filing restraining orders. In Mike Maricini's case, she did file for a restraining order and claimed domestic violence. And the whole purpose of that was to prevent them from speaking out, from revealing this story, from revealing how she has treated them, from revealing all the details of her claiming pregnancies and all these manipulative tactics she engaged in to try and keep them, even though they weren't interested ultimately in being with her brand of crazy. Later on, after some of these, more recently, sort of in the middle as the next case was happening, she tried to change her name to hide from the reality of this getting out publicly. She eventually withdrew that name change request in Arizona. She's also appeared in court appearances wearing what is believed to be a prosthetic pregnant stomach to try and further her narrative that, she was in fact pregnant with twins. She made a bunch of dates about when she was due. Ironically, she was going to be due with the twins, allegedly a boy and a girl, on Valentine's Day. Isn't that romantic? Even though the math didn't work out there. If you follow the case, she later goes on to, once there's a lot of doubt cast upon the legitimacy of these pregnancies, she magically ends up not having them anymore. It's the immaculate deconception. And she starts weaving this story of, well, they must have somehow been a miscarriage. And, this is after her claiming that she's more than 20 some weeks in, and there's laws about fetal death and fetal death. It just goes on and on and on. I've been following this case from the beginning, since Dave Neal appeared on Law Talk with Mike. And Law Talk with Mike is a YouTube channel where attorney Mike Gravelin from the Chicago area just talks about various cases he's interested in. And this one crossed his path, and Laura Owens made sort of threats and claims. And this woman is outrageous too. She's, in my opinion, crazy too. And I think she suffers from the same kind of crazy that Jenn Kamp does. It's just that hers wants to involve being pregnant, and, well, in lieu of being pregnant, she wants to be with some guy that doesn't want to be with her. And if he doesn't, she's going to sue him into being with her. See, I think there's some parallels here. So anyhow, she's had a lot of attempts at defamation suits with anyone talking about it, even mentioning her name. I might be taking a risk here, but hopefully I'm too unimportant to notice. Her attempts to keep people silent are through all these threats, and she's actually tried to sue some of the podcasters, really getting this out, like Dave Neal. He's had to lawyer up and spend lots of money, and it's sad. She should be labeled a vexatious litigant, in my opinion, too. You shouldn't be using the court system for this, especially when it's being proven that you're a liar and that you're a fraud and that you're engaging in some kind of con to be in relationships with people. Just like Jenn Kamp was lying and making false statements, trying to get legal action against someone she hated. There should be rules. There should be laws that prevent vexatious litigation. I think there are, but they tend not to be pursued because it's just not worth the effort. But then we have more recent things like anti-slap laws, which thank heavens there are in this state. And I think at least 30 states, and where Dave Neal has moved to in Tennessee, is one of the stronger slap legislations on the books. But we've got all these crazy people that, are trying to go about their nefarious dealings in the court system, trying to use it to their advantage to punish people. And when it doesn't go their way, they want to take out anyone talking about it. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. That's the TLDR with Laura Owens and Clayton Echard. This is going to go on forever, I think. Well, maybe not. Hopefully it all comes to a head at the June 10th hearing in Arizona, which a number of podcasters are going to report from. And it's going to be quite a spectacle, I think. Rightly so. This woman wanted to be both a celebrity and a victim at the same time and try to be anonymous while also being famous. The dichotomies are extraordinary. But that's the TLDR with Laura Owens. I highly recommend that you actually look these up, because you could spend hours following this case. And if you want to, you can spend hours. Well, you can spend days and months following all of them, as I have. But this is the condensed version. Hopefully you found some of it amusing. Hopefully some of it's enlightening. And hopefully you'll join me in whatever I do next, which I think I need something less dramatic. So maybe something about the brainwashing that happens in primary. That's Mormon Youth Sunday School. And the brainwashing that happens via music. It's the condensed form of church culture, and you can't have culture without a cult. Or at least that's how I feel about Mormonism. Until next time.